So our project is obviously on the media and COVID-19. I'm Catherine Wickersham, and I did this research with Michael and Lily. Furthermore, we looked into how the media had an effect on the public perception of COVID-19. So our research topics, which inspired this whole project, were obviously the media and COVID-19, but more than that, we looked into all the different types of media, especially social media and news networks, because those are the most prominent in our society, and our survey results did reflect that. But there are some issues when it comes to these things, especially in 2020. There's a lack of trustworthiness, and a lot of the news networks now are partisan. So you can go to one news source and get a completely different take on world events than another, which drastically affects how people view certain events, such as the coronavirus, which is obviously one of the most historical and important events to happen within our lifetime. And the news has sort of taken this in a bad direction, and it has become very partisan depending on how much news people are ingesting and how they are ingesting their news. So that's kind of what we looked into in this project. So variables were obviously very important when beginning this study. Our independent variables were age and location, so we really focused on those for demographics so we could have a better understanding of our audience. And then the frequency of news consumption was a big one for us because we felt that that would show us a lot about how someone interpreted the virus and also the platform of choice for news. Our dependent variables were how seriously one takes the pandemic, the level of trust one has in the media, and the current access to coronavirus coverage. So our research question was, does the frequency in which one consumes news impact their perception of the seriousness of COVID-19? So we essentially played off the idea that there are these partisan and biased news networks or even social media and all the other places people consume their news, that it could potentially affect their perception of the virus because they're hearing so many different things from so many different places. So we hypothesized that an individual who consumes the news on a daily basis is going to take the pandemic far more seriously than someone who does not consume news often.
Okay, so getting into our survey, we started off with demographics, and the first two questions we asked were which age range do you fall within? And when looking at the graphs underneath, 12 respondents are between the ages of 18 to 29, 14 are between the ages of 50 and 65, four respondents are between the ages of 30 to 50, 2 respondents are under the age, or 18 years of age or under 18 years of age, and 1 person is over 65. And then we asked which geographic location do you live in the US? And 29 respondents said the Northeast, while two respondents live in the Mid-Atlantic, and 1 person lives in the Midwest, and 1 person lives in the Southeast. So we then transitioned to news media related questions, and the third question we asked was, how often do you consume the news? And 17 respondents said every day, 9 respondents consume the news a couple times per week, 7 respondents consume the news occasionally, and 0 respondents consume the news never, which is good. And then the next question on our survey was, how do you consume your news? And we were given the results of 18 respondents who said major news networks, 13 respondents said social media, and 1 person said blogs, and another 1 person said government officials. So we then went furthermore and asked, which news network do you trust? And 13 respondents said CNN, 10 respondents said Fox News, 5 respondents said both BBC and MSNBC, And lastly, we asked the respondents if they have seen as much news coverage as they were 6 months ago. And when looking at our results, 2 people, we did a scale from 0 to 5, and 2 people said 1, 18 people said 2, 6 people said 3, 7 people said 4, and 1 person said 5.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the scale went 1 or 0 being significantly less, 5 being significantly more.
So these are all of the graphs just on news and media results. So in the top left is number 3, and then top right, number 4, bottom left, number 5, and the graph shown on the bottom right is the question from 0 to 5 on, yeah, as you can see. Okay, then we transitioned into coronavirus related questions, and we asked, when surveying about COVID-19 related questions, we said that the media underplayed, overplayed, or actually depicted the seriousness of the pandemic. And 23 respondents said actually depicted, 7 respondents said underplayed, and 3 respondents said overplayed. Right after that question, we said, I believe that the coronavirus is dangerous and needs to be taken seriously, with answer choices of agree, somewhat agree, neutral, somewhat disagree, and also disagree. And 31 respondents said agree, and 2 respondents said disagree. 2 respondents said, sorry, it just, hold on, I just lost the question. Wait, okay. 31 people said agree, and 2 people said somewhat agree. The next question we asked was, how often do you wear a mask out when you go outside? And 27 people said always, 5 people said often, and 1 person said sometimes. And we also asked another question saying, it has been hard for me to find accurate information about the coronavirus. And 19 people said false, and 15 people said true. And these are the graphs shown from our coronavirus results. And as you can see, again, number 6, 7, 8. And the last question is the true or false question.
So we threw all our data into SPSS, and we looked at basically the correlation of our hypothesis, the two variables our hypothesis involved, which was, I believe, how much someone believes that the coronavirus is dangerous and needs to be taken seriously, and how often they consume the news. So basically, we took that in, threw it in, and we looked at the correlation. And the correlation, we got a p-value, which is the sig2 tail on the chart, of 0.593. Now that number is considerably large for a p-value. Like in order for a p-value to be significant, it has to be less than 0.05. And that 0.593 is significantly larger than 0.05. So based off of that, we were able to determine our hypothesis wasn't necessarily correct, as basically we determined no matter how much news someone consumes, they do believe that the coronavirus is dangerous and does need to be taken seriously. It's again shown in the independent samples test. You can see the sig2 tail value. When comparing the 2 samples, it's 0.520, which is again significantly larger than 0.05. Again, showing how there's not a significant correlation between the two. So just analyzing all our results, even though our respondents all consume different sources, are from different areas, different ages, they all understand that the pandemic is very serious, needs to be taken very seriously, and they need to do as much as they can in order to prevent the spread. Our respondents overall feel that the media did a fairly good job portraying that the pandemic was serious and needs to be made a big deal out of, even though some people agree. Overall, it was clear that the news and media outlets had a positive impact in what people believe in regards to knowing that it's not good for them. And now our respondents feel that they're better able to find information than 6 months ago. Yeah, that it can be hard and it can be easy depending on where they go to find correct, truthful information and who to believe. And obviously, it's still being covered now as much as it was back then. And most of our correspondents, they continue wearing masks, continue social distancing, doing everything required. But overall, our hypothesis was shown that there is not a correlation between how much news someone watches and how seriously they take the coronavirus. They believe no matter what, no matter how much news they're watching, that it is serious, and that's really the main takeaway, is that everyone needs to be social distancing, wearing masks, and taking this virus as seriously as possible. Thank you. That's all.